What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Dirty Bird Fly Through, and happy Victory Monday, the first Victory Monday of the 2025 season. The Atlanta Falcons last night on Sunday Night Football didn't just beat, but dominated the Minnesota Vikings all night, only allowing them to 6 points, none of them in the second half. Absolutely balling out both sides of the ball. We're going to get all into it. But remember to subscribe, remember to like, remember to share it out. All the support is greatly appreciated. So let's get right into this thing. Let's run this thing down. Last night, after being underdogs all week essentially, not getting much love from the national media, which we should be accustomed to at this point. We know that we're going to have to essentially take the respect. We're going to have to instill the respect into the national media. You could say earn. I don't even think there's a way to earn the respect of the national media if you are the Atlanta Falcons. You're just going to have to instill it in them. And last night was a great first step at doing that, but also really getting things back on track after losing against Tampa week 1. They went into Minnesota. They went into Sunday Night Football knowing that they had to win this game. They had to make a statement. With these primetime games early and a lot of these teams that the Falcons were really viewed to potentially get off to a rough start due to a lot of these teams on our schedule. The Vikings, and then we still have games coming up versus Washington and versus Buffalo and San Francisco, and that's just in the next few weeks. We do have a bye week sprinkled in there. But this was really that first big time test. You can always chop a divisional matchup down as it can go either way, and we saw that versus Tampa. But this was the first big test for the Falcons, and they didn't just pass the test, they absolutely tore it apart. And we saw it all night from both sides of the ball. And the Falcons got their first win on Sunday Night Football in 6 years. Their first win since 2019 against the Eagles on Sunday Night Football. The Matt Ryan to Julio Jones screen pass that won us that game versus Philadelphia. That was the last time before last night that we won on Sunday Night Football. And personally to me, Sunday Night Football has always been that big game of the week. If you're playing in Sunday Night Football, you know your team is worth something. You know the entire world is watching. So to see the Falcons go out there on NBC and make that big statement, it definitely meant a lot to me to see the boys back out there, see them flying around, and the reason why the Falcons won this game, and it started with the defense, defense, defense. And there's so many ways that you can put it. Last night, the Falcons and Jeff Ulbrich, there were a lot of questions about how this defense was going to handle Minnesota, was going to handle Kevin O'Connell, who, it has been established as one of the best coaches in the NFL. JJ McCarthy coming off of a big fourth quarter comeback in Chicago on Monday night. How would they handle that? There was a lot of hype surrounding Minnesota. A lot of people were anticipating Minnesota to get off to a hot start, and JJ McCarthy be the talk of the NFL this morning. That's not what happened. The Falcons defense went in there and they wrecked every single narrative that was getting ready to be made about. And they created their own. 6 sacks, 4 turnovers. Think about that. 4 turnovers, 2 interceptions, 1 forced fumble, and then a muff punt at the end of the game from Minnesota to top it all off. 11 quarterback pressures, only 2 field goals allowed. Think about this. Minnesota had the same amount of points the entire game that the Falcons had sacks in this game. And that is really all you got to say to prove how dominating of an effort this was for the Falcons defense. for Jeff Ulbrich, who we knew was preaching that attack style all offseason, was preaching, was talking about how this team is going to come out, they're going to attack, they're going to get to the quarterback. And it had been something that we heard in years past and we didn't necessarily fully see play out. So, of course, there was reason to be suspicious. But last night, we saw what that attack style defense looks like. We saw them get to the quarterback. We saw those opportunities that were missed versus Tampa and Baker Mayfield that really did play a part in the Falcons ultimately just coming up short week 1. We saw them absolutely flip the narrative. They took advantage of those opportunities. They turned them into turnovers. They turned them into sacks. They turned them into 3-and-outs. Forced Minnesota to punt. And that is what led, and that was the recipe behind the dominating effort. The Falcons were rushing 5, rushing 6 all game, and it didn't matter if they had Justin Jefferson. It didn't matter who they had. JJ McCarthy was living in absolute hell all last night. And I said in the preview, Minnesota could be set up for a letdown with JJ McCarthy. Now, I didn't think it was going to be this. I did not expect the Falcons defense to come out and be this dominating. But boy, did it delight me to see it. And I was enjoying every little second of it. And in the defense's very stellar performance, probably one of the best performances I have seen from a Falcons defense in years, without a doubt, we saw the rookie shine, baby. We saw the rookie shine. We saw Jalon Walker, the 15th overall pick, get his first NFL sack last night, where he basically just bodied JJ McCarthy, which is what happened to JJ McCarthy all night. James Pearce Jr., that dog, the guy who we have heard about really since the start of training camp, the juice that he can bring, how aggressive he's been, how present he has been in the opposing backfield. We saw him last night get pressure on the quarterback. He got to JJ McCarthy a couple of times, and then those guys in the secondary. Xavier Watts with his first career interception last night, and Billy Bowman Jr., who I'm officially designating as the Billy Badass for the Atlanta Falcons. What a night for him. What a night. Interception, pass breakups. It felt like he was really in on a lot of those plays. The only real time I can actually remember him getting burned was, of course, I believe that 3rd and 1 that Minnesota took the deep shot. And, I will say, the moment that I really knew we had this game in hand, and it really just was not Minnesota's night, was when they couldn't connect on that pass. Because Minnesota had a really rough time last night, but when you couldn't even connect on that pass, the one time that Jalen Nair was able to actually get Billy Bowman for a play that, if they connected, could have turned the game upside down. When they didn't get that pretty much spelled the end of it for the Vikings. Because I then believed the very next drive was the drive that we would go and score the touchdown to officially put the final nail in the coffin on the game. And speaking of JJ McCarthy, he had a big reality check last night. JJ McCarthy was put into hell by that Falcons defense, but I really think it goes deeper than this, which is JJ McCarthy really as good as we were told by the national media and by the press? Or is he the guy who many had concerns about coming out of Michigan? Is he really capable of being that big-time playmaker at quarterback, at being able to efficiently run an offense, and when things get rough back there, being able to thrive under pressure? We saw him do it last week for Chicago, but Chicago really let them back into that game. They played with their food all day until it got snatched away from them. So we saw the Falcons come out last night, and they knew that they could not give JJ McCarthy any leniency. They couldn't give him any breathing room, and they did not. They did not, especially in that second half, which I really do not remember the last time the Falcons have held a team scoreless in the entire second half. So it goes without saying that not only did the Falcons defense have one of their best performances we had seen in years, but that JJ McCarthy, you're going to have to go back to the drawing board. And now coming out of this game, McCarthy got beaten up. He got injured. So really now with Carson Wentz having to step in for them, I really think it's going to be an opportunity to really see really where is JJ McCarthy actually at, where is he at mentally, where is he at with his ability to play. And these are things that you're going to have to consider for Minnesota. But as far as the Falcons go, it was an amazing opportunity that we saw them take full advantage of to make a statement in front of the entire world. The narrative had been for years, and it was a absolutely valid narrative. The Falcons had one of the worst defenses in the NFL right now, and I cannot even believe I am saying this. The Atlanta Falcons have the number 2 defense in the National Football League through 2 weeks. I cannot believe I just said that, but it is actually true. So, listen, you can say everything you want about Jeff Ulbrich and his time previously here. He has the guys flying around. He has them making plays in the secondary. We're seeing this attack style defense. It's something we've been waiting on for years. So give it up for Jeff Ulbrich. Give it up for Jeff Ulbrich. So it goes without saying. I could go on all day about how great this defense was, but if you want to sum it all up in one word, what this defense was, spectacular. Spectacular. Now let's talk about our new kicker. Let's talk about Parker Romo, aka Peachtree Parker, who last night, man, after literally being told 24 hours before that he was going to even be making this trip, went out there in his first game kicking for the Atlanta Falcons, and it certainly will not be his last. 5 for 5 on field goals, including a 54-yarder. He was the guy who put those points up on the board. The Falcons had 5 field goals last night that made up most of their points, and you give it all to Parker Romo, aka Peachtree Parker, man, because he went out there and he knew the Vikings turf, but still, that kicking position, and we had seen it with Younghoe Koos, it could definitely have been the nerves that got into him. Parker Romo didn't let any of that happen last night, and it was so hilarious in the postgame. You know this guy is just new here because he didn't even know everyone on the team. He knew Bijan, but he had to introduce himself to Leonard Floyd. But man, listen, they all know who he is now, and it's certainly not going to be the last of him. I believe Raheem Morris has said that there's a 90% chance he will be kicking against Carolina. Forget the 90. I don't even know why you would say 90. I don't know where the other 10% is coming from. Get Younghoe Koos off this team. It's Parker Romo's job now. It's a new time in Atlanta. Thank you Younghoe Koos for your services. You had a spectacular 6 seasons here. Gave us a lot of great memories. He was a fan favorite, but we have, I think, seen in this last year that Koos just is not going to cut it anymore. He does not have it where we clearly see last night that we didn't have to worry about a kicker having to make a kick or not because Parker Romo went out there and did it just fine. So, big shout out to Parker Romo. Now, going over to the offensive side of the football, and it was all about the running game last night. Bijan Robinson had another spectacular game in primetime. Listen, Bijan is making a name for himself and is really starting to, I think, with these primetime performances, like the one that we saw in Philadelphia last year, like the one we saw in Washington last year, Vegas, and last night now, you're starting to see why Bijan is up there with Saquon, with Derrick Henry, with, when he's healthy, Christian McCaffrey. 22 carries, 143 yards on the ground, another 3 receptions for 25 yards through the air. Bijan absolutely just, but see at that point, that's almost becoming just common for Bijan. That's just another every 2-3 games we see Bijan do that. And every single day we need to wake up. We need to thank God that we got a player like Bijan Robinson on this team because he is clearly the engine of everything that goes through this offense. He is the top target in this offense. He is the top threat in this offense. He is who you have to worry about. And it makes this offense so much more dynamic and can make it so much more dynamic if we continue to build off of it. And then Tyler Allgeier, Bijan's running mate in the backfield. When he was called upon last night, you're talking about 16 carries for 76 yards and the touchdown to seal it in the end. So, needless to say, we saw a perfect formula of old school football last night on Sunday Night Football. We saw the defense come out and play very stingy, and then we saw the Falcons come out and it went directly through their running game. We saw them get Bijan going early, which I said you were going to have to do. You were going to have to get Bijan going early if you wanted to stand a chance to win. And we saw them do that. Then we saw them finish off this game with Tyler Allgeier. And sometimes that's just how you got to do it. It may not always be the most entertaining, but sometimes it's not about stats or it's not about how pretty it looks. It's just about whether you win the game or not. And last night, the Falcons totaled for 219 yards on the ground between Bijan and Allgeier. So you got to give credit, man. You got to give credit. Give it up for the running backs, man, because they went out there, they balled out, and I really think that there's a lot that can be said coming out of this game still about the offense. But one thing you cannot deny is that this duo between Bijan and Allgeier has once again proven why they are one of the best in the NFL. Everyone talks about the one the Lions have, the Ravens with Derek and Lamar. But last night was an amazing opportunity, and the Falcons took full advantage to show why Bijan Robinson and Tyler Allgeier, the perfect complements to each other, are one of the best duos in this league. Now, talking about our quarterback, talking about Michael Penix and the role that he played last night. Michael Penix went 13 for 21 and 135 yards. No touchdown passes, no turnovers. He had a pretty game manager-esque game. He wasn't really asked to do a whole lot, and I'm not going to lie, there were times during this game that, I was kind of frustrated to see that we weren't getting the passing game going. We didn't get it to we didn't get it to Drake London. We did one time, but then that led to our only turnover of the game when Drake London got the ball punched out. We got it to Kyle Pitts early, but then really after that, I don't think Pitts had a catch the whole second half. Darnell Mooney only had two catches for 20 yards. So it was definitely a change of pace from, what we have seen so far in Michael Penix, but here's what I will say. He didn't turn the ball over last night. And, in the fourth quarter, when we needed him to make those throws, we needed him to make those plays, he did. He got the ball to his receivers. He got the ball to Drake London on that slant to get us that critical first down. He got the ball to Bijan when he needed to, got the ball to Pitts when he needed to. So I say all of that to say, did Penix have the most impressive night stat-wise? No. He had some incompletions. And it kind of reminded us that this was a guy who was making his fifth start last night. That's about what it looked like. But it looked like a guy who, despite the inexperience, has a lot of maturity. Because Penix did not go out and lose us the game last night. He didn't make it about himself. He went out there. He did what he was asked to do. He understood that this was the night to get it going from the running game. And that is what you did. You did not see Michael Penix turn the ball over like we have seen from the past few Falcons quarterbacks before him. And I think we can both agree that the main thing that has kept the Falcons from the playoffs the last 2 years has been turnovers from the quarterback position. And if you can honestly eliminate those turnovers, we're in the playoffs the past 2 years. And seeing how well Michael Penix does with keeping the ball out of harm's way. I don't remember a time Penix really put the ball in harm's way last night. So we definitely see that we have a quarterback who, even though has only started 5 games, has the maturity of a 7, 8 year veteran, I would say. So that is something that is really special about Michael Penix. And Michael Penix is definitely going to get more opportunities to do special things. But this was just a night. It went through Bijan. It went through Allgeier. But it doesn't matter how we did it. I could not care how we won this game. We won this game. We won this game dominating. And that is what matters to me. So shout out to Michael Penix for being a team player last night, for doing the job a quarterback is supposed to do. Now, talking about the offensive play calling and Zach Robinson, I'm not going to go too hard on Zach Robinson. I'm really not, because I still feel like he did call a better game than last week. I think the number one goal of the Falcons heading into Sunday night's game was to get the running game going, which we did see, and I got to give them credit for. The O-line looked much better blocking. We saw Chris Lindstrom back out there doing what he does, being Chris Lindstrom. I felt like we saw Ryan Newsel holding up for the most part. Elijah Wilkinson still had some questionable spots, but overall, he wasn't too much of a liability. So in the end, we saw the Falcons and their play calling, I think, get better. But the one thing I will say is that you cannot continue to run out of the pistol, because I honestly felt like the Falcons ran more out of the pistol last night than they did week 1. And eventually teams are going to catch on to that. So it's still early in the season, and maybe you can get away with it now, but later down the stretch, you are going to have to open it up. And maybe Zach Robinson understands that, and maybe, these plays early we see out of the pistol could be to, in future games, set up more play action, set up more things under center. So I would like to think that Zach Robinson, coming from the McVay system, has enough knowledge to know what he is doing. We did see this offense get better over the course of the season last year, and even when Michael Penix came in at the end of last year, we saw this offense firing. So I think the offense is going to get it right, but I still wish that we would put a little more variety in there than the pistol. But still, overall, I'm not going to go too hard on Zach Robinson. I feel like he did call a better game. I would just like to see a little bit more variety in how they line up, and not just lining up out of the shotgun and pistol. Now, talking about some game balls, and the first one we're giving out is to Billy Badass himself, Billy Bowman. First NFL interception. About was supposed to have another one also. I really think that he had multiple opportunities, but he had his first NFL interception. He was really all over the field last night, making plays. Of course, the one play that he was burned on ultimately didn't matter because Xavier didn't catch it. JJ McCarthy overthrew him. So shout out to Billy Bowman. Yeah, as we talk about with these rookies, yes, they're going to look like rookies. They're going to get burned on some plays, but you would much rather see them out there learning and showing their upside, which we saw last night. We saw the Falcons rookies out there last night showing their upside against Minnesota in a very critical place and a tough place to play on prime time. They were able to get some energy going early, and they carried it all night, and the energy was absolutely amazing. The next game ball, I could have really have given this to anyone, I feel like. I'm going to give it to Zach Harrison. I really feel like Zach Harrison, you saw making plays all night. He had a sack, and on that play, he also forced a fumble, which was counted as the Falcons. I believe that was their third turnover of the game. You saw him in there for lots of tackles of loss. And we really talk about, with Grady Jarrett leaving, who is going to be that guy that steps up in the interior. And Zach Harrison is one of those guys we have talked about for 3 years. Entering year 3, we got to see it from him. When is it going to really come alive? We saw it come alive last night, just as we did with a lot of the Falcons front. But We saw Zach Harrison back there last night. We saw him in there on some plays. We saw him taking the quarterback down. We saw him force a turnover. So get it up to Zach Harrison. He gets the second game ball. Now, the next game ball, and this really isn't a shocker. This is going to be a guy that I think is going to be in contention for a game ball just about each and every week. That is Bijan Robinson. We went through the stat line already. We talked about him. He's a special player. He is one of truly the best running backs and one of the best players in all of football. Whenever he gets the ball in his hands, anything could happen. I think we're all still waiting on that big home run, but you can see that it's only a matter of time. He is just one man making one man miss from cutting any of these to the house. So that is what makes him so special, how fluid he moves, and we saw it again last night. So another game ball for Bijan Robinson. And then this last game ball, I'm going to give it to Tyler Allgeier. I'm going to give Tyler Allgeier a game ball because I really feel like the Falcons, in a spot where they needed to finish this game last night, we saw Allgeier come in in large parts, yes, he took advantage of Bijan beating this defense up and really making them have to catch their breaths all night. But we saw Allgeier come in. We saw them finish him off. We saw him get those chunk runs. We saw him get the touchdown. So this game ball could have gone to anyone. So we're giving it to Tyler Allgeier. Also want to say I actually did kind of mean to give Parker Romo a game ball, so we're gonna give him another game ball out at 5 game balls. Can you believe it? I don't. Typically, I like to limit the game balls. You know what? Maybe screw it. Everyone on defense gets a game ball. Everyone on defense could have been in contention for a game ball. You know what? Raheem Morris gets a game ball. But for real, shout out to Parker Romo. One of the most complete team wins that I think I have seen in a while, where you just saw the Falcons go out, you saw them dominate a team, and really not give them any chance at all. And even in situations where in years past it probably would have been, oh no, here we go again, we saw the Falcons come through. I do want to touch really quickly on AJ Terrell. Last night in the second quarter, we saw him leave the game with a hamstring injury. And the injury update is we have none. Raheem Morris said that we're probably going to know more on Wednesday. Now, the thing with hamstring injuries is typically they don't keep you out too long, but the issue is they can linger. So it definitely, I think, is notable as far as at least Sunday goes against Carolina. Does AJ have a chance? Yes, but it's really going to be more so about how you manage this hamstring injury in general, on top of the fact that, you know, AJ Terrell is obviously very important to this defense. So I think the fact that, we really don't know too much, I don't know how to take it, but I was encouraged to at least see, because initially when I saw him first go down, I thought it was pretty bad, but hearing it was just a hamstring, you know, hopefully, with taking the right precautions, even if he does have to miss the game Sunday, he can be out there, and he doesn't have to miss too much time past that. So definitely hoping for the best as far as AJ Terrell and the injury goes. And looking forward to Sunday, looking forward to our second divisional game in the first 3 weeks of the season. The Falcons head to Charlotte, head to Bank of America Stadium, which I have dubbed Mercedes-Benz North, to take on the Carolina Panthers. And honestly, Carolina has looked pretty rough these first few weeks. I think we have seen a team that had a lot of hype themselves heading into this season that has really fell flat. They got eviscerated in Jacksonville week 1, and even though they had a chance to come back and win that game versus the Cardinals yesterday, they were down 27-9 with 5 minutes left. That was essentially Arizona playing with their own food, kind of like what Chicago did to Minnesota. So I will say, I think this is a game that it's a great opportunity for the Falcons to go in there. We have, especially when it is not raining, we have owned we have owned Mercedes-Benz North. We have owned that stadium. We travel very well to Charlotte. There's a chance that I may actually be going to this game on Sunday. It's not a high chance, but it's a possibility. We're going to have to see how it plays out. So maybe if some things go the right way, Dirty Bird Fly Through, your boy will be in Charlotte in Mercedes-Benz North on Sundays. But, just going to have to see how this week plays out. However, it's a great opportunity for the Falcons, I think, to get over 500 early, but it is still a game you cannot sleep on. This is a divisional opponent, and I can guarantee you they are going to play us tough like they always do. We are probably the game they look forward to most on our schedule each year. So we have that. We have week 3 in Charlotte against the Panthers. Sunday night football. It was a great win in Minnesota, but now we got to move on. Enjoy the rest of your Victory Monday, and we'll be back on here later this week. You know how it is, talking about this game against the Panthers we have on Sunday in Charlotte. Anyways, with that being said, make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, make sure to share it out. I will see you all in the next one. Take care.